you from my home today. I'm self-isolating and therefore not able to join the team in the recording. But I want to welcome you to this Broadview service this day and entrust you into the hands of this community and of the rest of our staff as we carry through with this service this day. And invite Margaret to help us begin.
Welcome to Broadview United. We're here at the Arbutus site on a beautiful Thursday afternoon, and so we do welcome you to this service of worship. We start with the acknowledgement that we gather on the unceded lands of the Coast Salish people, specifically the Lekwungen. You know, we've just come through a period of days where we've been hearing the stories of residential school survivors. And it seems to me, as we begin this new theme this month, which is called to listen deeply, that that is our starting point always when we talk about the road to reconciliation. It's a long road, it's a tough road. But until we can listen to the stories and to really hear the pain and the anguish that so many generations lived through, we will not have the grounding for going on as a community. May we walk this road in spirit and in truth. And so we begin this day by lighting our candle. This is the light of the world. This is the light that lives within Indigenous cultures. This is the light that lived in the spirit of Jesus. This is the light in the Buddha. And so wherever you are this day, whatever you're struggling with, whatever you're trying to make sense of in this time and place, remember that as we walk towards the light, as we look for the light within each other and within our world, we will gradually keep on finding the way together. Thanks be to God.
Send us love, send us
we enter our time of prayer today, I want to share with you an excerpt from John O'Donohue. John O'Donohue was an Irish priest and poet, and he lived in Ireland. He died about 4 or 5 years ago, maybe 6 or 7, and he leaves us a rich legacy. And so I begin with some of his words. I place on the altar of dawn the quiet loyalty of breath, the tent of thought where I shelter, waves of desire I am sure to, and all beauty drawn to the eye. May my mind come alive today to the invisible geography that invites me to new frontiers, to break the dead shell of yesterdays, to risk being disturbed and changed. May I have the courage today to live the life that I would love, to postpone my dream no longer, but do at last what I came here for, and waste my heart on fear no more. Dear friends, let us join together as we seek the quiet within us and as we attend to the voice of God. Gracious One, energy of love and healing, hope and forgiveness. What might it mean for each of us to embrace the dreams that reside within, to live with the Spirit that would have us waste our hearts on fear no longer? Oh God, turning our backs on fear seems much easier when the sun is shining, when the laughter flows easily, when the world is not dealing with wars and famines and fires and racism and political systems that have gone crazy. And yet, oh God, you call us to remain grounded in spirit and truth, to stay attentive to what comes our way on a daily basis, to be steadfast even when we cannot see the road ahead of us, to keep our hearts and minds open when we are hurting inside. To turn away from fear, O God, requires the greatest act of faith imaginable, for it asks that we let go of what is beyond our grasp. It asks that we live in the present and that we turn towards the blessings that we know to be true. And so it is we give thanks for the gift of this day. We give thanks for the presence of love, grace, and second chances. The willingness to see and hear and feel via the one who said, "Lo, I am with you always, even and especially when you do not sense my presence." And so, friends, in this time and space, I would invite you to name now, aloud or in silence, that for which you are grateful. You might picture people that you love. You might picture memories that fill your heart with joy. You might be remembering a birthday card, or a phone call, or simply a hug from someone in your bubble. Oh God, hear also now our prayers for this world in which we live. Again, the people we love, including ourselves, and that which burdens our hearts, and that which makes us burn with the desire for justice, that all people would be seen and heard and valued and offered the same opportunities as their next door neighbor. At this time, we lift up Wendy and Tim Brown as they walk with Wendy's father, Jack Morrison, as Jack approaches his final days. We give thanks for Jack's brilliant mind and the gift of his living and loving. O God, for that which we have no answers, may we be gentle with ourselves. For that which requires our action, may we find strength and courage. As we walk beside the most marginalized and the hurting, and as we advocate for the health of this planet, may we be fierce and resilient. And in the nature of each of our days, may all of our listening be done through the lens of love. Thanks be to you, O God. Amen and amen.
Lost touch and nothing's feeling right. You can't find the path that leads you home. You don't know which road, which way to choose. That's when you gotta listen. And listen to your heart, listen to your soul. Inside you'll find the answer and the place you need to go. Listen with your heart, listen and your heart will let you know. No matter where you are, the truth is never far. Just listen and your heart will lead you home. This world has got your mind confused. Feels like your faith has just run out on you. You can find that faith inside your soul. The strength you need lies deep in you. That's why to listen with your heart, listen with your soul. Inside you'll find the answer to take you to the place you need to go. Listen with your heart, listen and your heart will let you know. No matter where you are, the truth is never far. Just listen and your heart will lead you home. Listen with your heart, listen to your soul. Inside you'll find the answers to take you to the place you need to go. Listen with your heart, listen and your heart will let you know. No matter where you are, the truth is never far. So just listen and your heart will lead you home.
And so as we begin a new month, yes, we begin a new theme, the theme of learning to listen deeply. And Mark will be speaking to that in his sermon, which will be coming shortly. And so for the next 4 weeks, we have a series of passages from the books of Samuel. And reading today from 1 Samuel 1, verses 9 to 18. One time after they had finished their meal in the house of the Lord at Shiloh, Hannah got up. She was deeply distressed, and she cried bitterly as she prayed to the Lord. Meanwhile, Eli the priest was sitting in his place by the door. Hannah made a solemn promise. Lord Almighty, look at me, your servant. See my trouble and remember me. Don't forget me. If you give me a son, I promise that I will dedicate him to you for his whole life, and that he will never have his hair cut. Hannah continued to pray to the Lord for a long time, and Eli watched her lips. She was praying silently. Her lips were moving, but she made no sound. So Eli thought that she was drunk, and he said to her, "Stop making a drunken show of yourself. Stop your drinking and sober up." "No, I'm not drunk, sir," she answered. "I haven't been drinking. I am desperate, and I have been praying, pouring out my troubles to the Lord. Don't think I am a worthless woman. I have been praying like this because I'm so miserable." "Go in peace," Eli said, "and may the God of Israel give you what you have asked him for." "May you always think kindly of me," she replied. Then she went away, ate some food, and was no longer sad. Thanks be to God.
Welcome to our new series on the call of Samuel and deep listening. The story that Margaret read for you today is the first of 4 parts in this story that we'll read from the book of 1 Samuel. The book of 1 Samuel features a number of characters, Elkanah and Hannah, who are persons who are faithful and seeking to find their way. But Elkanah isn't really able to hear Hannah's pain. She's one of 2 wives, but she's the barren one. The story features Eli, the priest of the temple that Elkanah and Hannah go to. The story also features later on Samuel, the young child of Hannah. In the case of each of these characters, there's something that they need to learn in terms of listening deeply, expressing what it is that they are hearing and that they are saying. And in this case, an opportunity also for some deep listening to God. But I'm getting ahead of myself. In this first part of the story, we find Hannah coming to the temple, finding herself barren and judged by her community and by her own self. For in those days, a woman's sense of herself was very connected to the children that she could bear. The understanding of the dual role of both men and women in that process was not understood in the same way that we understand it now. So Hannah's barrenness is seen as a judgment on her from God. And so she goes to the temple and she prays earnestly, deeply. And out of her grief and her anguish, her heart pours itself out. While she's there, Eli, the priest and keeper of that temple, sees her and hears her, and he makes some assumptions. He assumes that the fervor with which she is praying is because she's drunk. She's had too much to drink, and he admonishes her for her behavior and for desecrating that place. Hannah turns and pleads to him and says, "I have not been drinking. but my heart is breaking. And my sobs are not the sobs of someone who is drunk, but rather someone for whom life has become overwhelming. And I simply offer my petition to God. Eli, thankfully, stops long enough to truly listen to her pain, to listen to her anguish, and suspend the judgment in which he began in that conversation. He then blesses her and says to her, "May God grant you what you wish, and may you have peace." Something happens for us when we step back from the assumptions that we often make. And too often we make them. In the news this week, the death in the hospital of a First Nations woman, Joyce, whose treatment and assumptions that she was and had brought this upon herself is indicative of the kind of judgment that often happens of our First Nations peoples. This week we remembered the trauma of residential schools. But in the shadow of all of that, the treatment of our First Nations brothers and sisters continues. This past summer, during one of our heat waves, in the hospital many had showed up who were overwhelmed by the heat. One Native young woman from the University of Victoria told of her story of showing up for the same reasons, of feeling nauseous, of feeling dizzy. Repeatedly, the hospital staff, in an aggressive tone, she said, kept hassling her about how much have you been drinking, what drugs have you been taking. And it wasn't until the toxicology test came back, showing that she had had nothing, confirming her story, that they were willing to believe her and begin treating her like they were the rest of the heat stroke patients in that emergency department. We think that we are immune from this kind of racism, often in Canada and here in Victoria, but we're not. Deep listening requires us to put aside the assumptions we often bring, whether that be in the rantings of someone who is struggling with mental health and the assumptions we make about them, the assumptions we make about somebody who is looking for a handout on the corner, who's without a home or living in a tent city, the assumptions we make about the congregating of teens and young adults, the assumptions we make about a single mom or a single dad. We make assumptions about people all the time. And like Eli, while the voice inside our head might not always proclaim it, we are definitively aware, if we're honest with ourselves, that we are expressing those words of judgment as well. So we have an opportunity this season to learn to listen deeply to those whose life experiences and stories are different than ours, whether it be in the small groups or in the discussion programs that we're a part of, or in our everyday lives. In COVID, it might seem it's impossible to do this, but it's not. And so as a part of this journey together, may we learn to listen deeply to one another, to check our assumptions and our privilege. The privilege that Eli had, he had to put aside, to listen deeply to the pain and the grief of Hannah. Sometimes listening deeply is hard for us because it also triggers our own previous trauma or experiences, and we jump quickly to offering our solutions. But listening deeply, as did Eli, was not to offer solution, but simply to be present to the journey and to the pain. And so it is my hope for this congregation as we move into this next phase of our evolving together that we'll learn to listen deeply. It is my hope that as individuals and as a society, we'll address things like systemic racism by learning to listen to those who have been victims of that racism, whose lives have been harmed, whose options have been limited, and that we will listen more than we will speak in order to bring, as our last song indicates, a sense of connectedness to our common goal, our common vision of deep in our hearts. This is my hope for each of you and us together this day. Thanks be to God as we begin this journey of deep listening. Amen.
And so, friends, as you prepare to go forward into whatever this week holds for you, may we remember that it is indeed deep within our hearts that there is a common vision, and that deep within our hearts there is a common song. And that deep within us, there's a common story that binds us together. And this is God's vision for how we can live out all of our days. And so go now, learning to love and listen and walk gently with each other. Thanks be to God. Amen.